How are you doing? This is Jason C. Brown. I hope you're doing well. Let's talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and skill acquisition or motor learning. When we talk about motor learning or skill acquisition, we have to be concerned with two terms. One is practice results. The other one is learning results. If you want to think about this, never mind my white shepherd is chasing moles throughout the strength garden, but check it out. Practice results are short-term retention. How well did you retain and how well can you perform those movements at the end of your practice session? Right? Maybe 45 minutes, maybe 1 hour, whatever, right? Learning results, however, are how well you can recall. And this is a very important word because this is the word they use in the science, retrieve. There's actually something called retrieval practice, right? How well can you recall and retrieve those skills at a much later date, maybe 2 weeks later? So learning results are, think of like long-term retention or short-term memory versus long-term memory. Practice results, short-term. How well can you replicate those movements at the end of your practice session? Learning results, how well can you replicate, retrieve, recall those movements at a much later date, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, boom. Now it seems completely counterintuitive what I'm going to discuss next. And to be honest, as a physical educator, it is hard sometimes to arrange a training session, a practice session in the way that is most beneficial for the student because it is a little bit chaotic and it is a little bit counterintuitive. And I have a feeling this video will just be part one of a series of videos because this is a pretty deep and pretty broad topic, all right? So stay tuned. We'll get into the types of practice and which one is better for those learning results, all right? Stay tuned. All right, so we're back. The first two types of practice arrangements that I want to discuss are blocked versus random, all right? Blocked training, a blocked practice session is arranged in such a way that you would practice one skill, one movement, one exercise for 15 minutes, a 15-minute block, before moving on to the second movement, the second skill, the second exercise, for another 15-minute block. These could also be repetitions, but time works a little bit better. 15-minute block of arm locks, 15-minute block of leg locks, a 15-minute block of rear naked chokes. Right? So 15 minutes of one skill, only that skill. 15 minutes of the other skill, only that skill. And then finish up with the last 15 minutes of only one skill. That is known as blocked. Boom. Versus random. Now random is performing these three same skills, arm lock, leg lock, rear naked, but in a random fashion, never repeating those same movement back to back. So you wouldn't do arm lock, arm lock, arm lock, leg lock. You would do it in a chaotic, random fashion. All right, so let me ask you this. Which one do you think would be better for learning results versus practice results? Again, here comes it. It's counterintuitive. Block practice is better for the practice results. You will perform better at the end of your session, your practice session, if the format is blocked. But your greater long-term retention, your greater learning results are improved if you use random. Your ability to recall and retrieve is enhanced if you use random, because when you're doing this chaotically and out of order, you have to physically as well as mentally retrieve, recall, mentally rehearse these movements. When you do a 15-minute block of one skill, you can sort of zone out and go on autopilot, right? When we're learning a new skill, we sort of don't want autopilot. When we're learning the new skill, we don't want autopilot. We want to be able to consciously call those skills. All right, so block versus random. Blocked is better for practice results. Random is better for learning results. We have two other arrangements coming up. All right, those are constant versus varied. Let's talk about those in 1 second. So the other arrangement that we need to be concerned with is constant versus varied. So the first one was blocked versus random. The second one is constant versus varied, where blocked and random refer to three distinct and completely separate skills or movements. Constant versus varied refers to the same skill. We're just changing up a variable within that one skill. For example, I will use throwing because throwing is very easy to illustrate and imagine, right? So constant would be throwing an overhand throw consistently throughout the entire training session at 20 feet. Throwing a baseball consistently at 20 feet for the entire session. Constant, constantly throwing the same thing. Now varied would be throwing overhand at a 10-foot distance, a 15-foot distance, a 35, 45-foot distance, and mixing that up. You are varying, you're literally changing one variable, sounds familiar, right? Variable of that same skill. Cool? And it's not just distance. It could be, you could be throwing a softball for some throws. You could be throwing a tennis ball. You could be throwing a back to the baseball. You could even change this up with an overhand throw, sidearm, underhand. Some people would consider those completely different skills, but in terms of classification, they are the same skill. All right. So constant is sticking with the same thing, same variables, same variation of one skill the entire session. Varied is changing some variable within that one skill, whether it be distance, whether it be weight, whether it be some type of variation. Now, let's go back to the practice results versus the learning results. It's the same thing as blocked versus random. It's counterintuitive, but the science is there. If we want greater learning retention, long-term retention, varied is better than constant. Constant would enhance the results at the end of your practice session, at the end of your 45-minute practice. But greater long-term retention occurs when we use a varied format. As well as if you can vary the format and perform it in a random fashion, that is the best arrangement. You know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like randori to me, right? Always changing up some variable, doing so in a random fashion, right? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'm just daydreaming, all right? So I hope you enjoyed this video. I would like to thank Inverted Gear for letting me hang out a little bit on their blog. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you very much.